So anyway, I want to thank you so much for tuning in. We're going to be talking about the good, the bad, and the ugly with Camtasia 9. Fortunately, it's mostly good. And why don't we just go ahead and dive right in? Now, probably the biggest change right now is with the addition of their 64-bit engine. Okay, oh geez, I'm sorry, folks. I'm getting mixed reports. I'm getting good sound, and now I'm hearing nothing. Can I just take a quick poll and see where people's sound is at? Okay, most people are saying that it's good. A couple people said they needed to refresh their browser, but after that it was good. So, all right, I'm very happy. So anyway, 64-bit engine. All versions prior to this one were still stuck on 32-bit, which means that Camtasia wasn't able to use as much of the processor and as much of the memory as it could have, which, as I'm sure you know, can lead to your videos being very kind of sticky on playback and lagging quite a bit. At least the past couple of years, you know that Camtasia Studio 8 was so much better in terms of that, but Camtasia 9 even rocks right on top of that. It's infinitely better. I've run tests where I put 24 full-size video windows and scaled them and played them all back at the same time, and with nary a hiccup. It was really amazing. And this is on a fair to midland machine. So let's get into not just the changes under the hood, but the changes that you're actually going to see right away. The biggest UI change was brought about when TechSmith decided that they wanted a little bit more parity with Camtasia Mac. Actually, not just a little, but a lot. The Mac version got a refresh as well, and they are almost on equal footing in terms of functionality. By the way, I don't know if you've noticed, but TechSmith just dropped the price of Camtasia. It used to be $299 and now it's $199. And something that's really interesting about that is that they've always been pretty liberal in terms of letting you install and use your serial number on a couple of different machines. They don't take issue with it as long as you are the main user. And what's really neat now is that the same serial for both Camtasia and for Snagit is cross-platform. So if you have a PC and you have a Mac, like I do, those serial numbers will unlock you on both operating systems, which I think is really cool. A lot of software vendors have, at least in the past, had a tendency to gouge where they will charge you for a PC version, and if you happen to be a Mac user, oops, they're going to charge you again. So that's a really nice thing to see. Now, the parity with Mac brings positive things, mostly positive, also some negative things. Let's take a quick look and see what we can see. This is the Camtasia 9 user interface. I'm going to go ahead and bring up a project. And by the way, for those of you asking whether this presentation will be archived, yes, it'll be right here on YouTube at the very same address you used to get here. So I've got this thing open, and one thing that you'll notice right away, if you are a user of Camtasia Studio, is that you now have these tools going down the left-hand side. It's a lot more reasonable in terms of how it uses the real estate, because you can pull things up and pull things back. So if you wanted to have an increased focus on your canvas, you were able to do that. I'm going to go ahead and bring up Camtasia Studio 8.6 by comparison. Notice that the tools are over here. And as I'm cycling through, I have the actual tool pane up here. Moving back to Camtasia 9, I've got my tools, my tool pane, but the tool pane is a lot thinner. And the reason that it's thinner is because it's sort of context sensitive. In other words, if I, for example, bring up, what do I want to bring up? Annotations. For example, I want to put a call out on the screen, right? You might look at it and think, oh my gosh, where are all the call out options? How do I go about getting done what I need to get done? Watch as I move this out. And this is a new thing too. Notice that, you know, previously I had to drag things out onto my timeline like so, and then I would come over and then I would have to place it where I wanted it to be. Now you can sort of cut out the middleman on that and drag things directly to the canvas so that you can add it to your timeline and place it at the same time. Right? And watch what happens when I placed it. I have it on my timeline here, just like one would expect. And you think, well, where do I adjust all my options? Well, look over here. This is called the Properties pane. And the cool thing about the Tools pane and the Properties pane is if you want a bigger area to work in, you can get them out of your way really easily. Notice I'm clicking on the Properties pane here and getting rid of that. I can also come over here and with another click on annotations, I can get rid of that Tools pane too. But I've got a bit of screen real estate, so let's keep them both up. This is not a very large project in terms of space. If I go here to my project settings, you can see that it's only 800 by 450 in size. By the way, if you have questions, I'll probably get to most of them at the end, but go ahead and write them down as they occur to you, and I'll just sort of cycle back. Sound good? Okay, so now that I have this call out here, notice it says, okay, I see you have a call out. Let's give you the options that specifically apply to the call out. I can move it from a fill to a gradient. I can change the fill color, change the outline. Of course, the background's white, so it's not really going to make much difference there. Well, maybe if I kick up the thickness a little bit. Now, notice here that I have several different sets of properties up here at once. And I've got Suzanne already asking, where are the visual properties now? Well, they're right here. If I click right on this little guy, then I have the visual properties of the callout, and you've got this the standard scale, opacity, rotation, position that you always had, which is really cool. Also, this was given a drop shadow by default with a gazillion drop shadow options. If I don't want it, I can just click and it goes away. Click on the X. Notice over here that I also have my callout options. And here's another interesting thing about the canvas. Not only are you able to move things directly from your media bin, it's called the media bin now, not the clip bin, onto the canvas, but all the things that you used to have to do, I'm back in 8.6 now, over here, definitely over here, especially with text. I'll see, look, I'm already used to version 9. I was trying to drag it onto my canvas. You know, you used to have to mess with the text in a completely separate window. Now in Camtasia 9, you just do everything right on the canvas, and it makes things so much easier. Keep in mind that every piece of media you have has its own set of properties. I'm going to go ahead and unlock this audio track. I click here, I can adjust the gain. If I click on this little screencast clip here, I've got the standard scale, opacity, rotation, position. Make sense? And you can see that I've added, that I've got a bunch of animations here. Let me see if I can find one that's, okay, this is a neat one. So I've got some animations. And as I'm going through, it's zooming in, etc. Now, there are times when you adjust your zoom level or something, and you have all kinds of different zoom levels throughout, but you think to yourself, oh my gosh, I've been concentrating on the wrong part of the screen throughout all of these. With Camtasia Studio, you had to go in here, get to a spot between those two animation keyframes, make your adjustment, come over here, make your adjustment, come over here, make your adjustment, etc. But one thing that's really cool about this, I'm going to undo all that. One thing that's really cool about this is that you can toggle between a change of property affecting just the current animation point or it affecting everything. So if I were to click here, notice that all of my little animation balls have turned red. And so when I scale, it's scaling everything the same way. Now, Lewis is saying that as a Mac user, it seems like the Windows version is turned into the Mac version. Yes and no. There is a lot of parity. There are still a couple of things that the Windows version does that the Mac version doesn't. But if you take a look, this is a screenshot of the Mac interface. You can see that it's nearly identical. You know, there are some menu options that are different. There are a few features that are available in the Windows version that aren't available in the Mac. There are some visual effects that are available in the Mac that aren't available in Windows. So that's one thing that you're going to want to be cognizant of if you're moving between Windows and Mac. Now, this particular project that I'm in right now is a legacy project. Well, I mean, all my projects are pretty much legacy projects because this this version is brand new. I'm actually going to go into an even better example. Go to this one. I'm noticing now that projects are taking a little bit longer to load up than they used to. It's not a deal breaker, but just something you want to be a little bit aware of. Now, there are certain kinds of media that will not, under any circumstances, port to a Mac. If you go up here in Camtasia 9, notice that you now have two different export options. Export as zip and export for Mac. As far as I can tell, they do exactly the same thing in terms of what you get at the end. But when you choose export for Mac, Camtasia checks all of the various items on the timeline and in the clip bin that aren't going to agree with Camtasia Mac. Legacy recordings, Camrec files. And by the way, this is context sensitive. So these are all examples of things that are present in this very project. So you might get all of these, you might get none of these, you might get even more. I don't know. But your recordings have to be Camtasia recordings when recordings became cross-platform compatible in Camtasia Studio 8.6. Those are called TREC files. Camrec files aren't going to work. AVI files, WMV files, those are Windows formats. They won't work on the Mac either. And legacy callouts. All the callouts going forward are cross-platform compatible. So if I go over here into my annotations, this legacy style, the one that you're used to in Camtasia Studio, will not move over to a Mac. But all the rest of these, the abstract, basic, etc., all of these will. Make sense thus far? Okay. So we talked about the canvas, how callout text is editable right on the canvas, and how you can place visuals directly on the canvas, thus saving yourself a step. One thing that I hadn't mentioned, and something that I always found very vexing about Camtasia Studio, was how awful the text looked. It was very jaggy, but now this engine deals with text a lot better. Look at that, it's gorgeous. Okay. So let's move on to talking about the library. Now, the library is actually one of those features that the Windows version of Camtasia has that the Mac version lacks. And it's really, really cool. If you don't use it, you definitely need to get into it for two reasons. The library is both a starting point for lots of lovely graphics that TechSmith has been kind enough to provide, as well as a place where you can store a lot of your own stuff. Now, the functionality of the library hasn't really changed all that much, but the assets that they're giving you now are really something else. I'm going to just go ahead and start up a brand new project, completely blank slate, and I'm just going to build something directly from the library. By the way, as you access the various tools here in Camtasia 9, notice that pretty much all of them are hotkey driven. So, for example, if I wanted to go to annotations, I just hit the N key, T for transitions, B for media bin, and for some reason, the media bin and the library share that hotkey. So you see they're the two tabbed elements up here. And I'm just gonna build a little something out of my library. Let's say that I'm making a screencast about a cool real estate app. And I want to create a kind of a dynamic title screen. So I'm going to grab, let's see, I'm not a commercial real estate agent. I'm just regular residential. So I'll put a little house up there. Notice that, you know, the canvas is free to work with. By the way, the size of the canvas, I saw somebody asking, how do you zoom in and out? And I'm not sure whether you were talking about the canvas or the timeline, or the tracks or what, but fortunately it's really easy no matter what way you do it. Watch as I'm gonna hold down the control key and choose plus, and notice that I'm zooming in on my canvas, zooming in and out with plus and minus. If I hold down Alt instead, then I'm increasing and decreasing my track height. If I hold down Control and Shift, then I'm zooming in and out on the timeline. So the plus and minus keys are very helpful in this regard. And that's one thing you're going to want to be aware of with this increased parity with the Mac, is that so very many of the hotkeys have changed. It's going to mess you up in the beginning. It's still messing me up. But in addition to being on more of an even keel with the Mac version so that people can move between the two platforms without getting thoroughly discombobulated, I'm finding that a lot of these hotkeys are just generally making more sense. So anyway, I find that title screens tend to be more effective when there's a person there. And something that they've got a couple of different folders with completely pre-cut stock photographs. One is of a man, one is of a woman, and I like that they're all the same person. That way you can kind of go from scenario to scenario. I wish there were more. I imagine it's only a matter of time. So let's see if Shelby is going to give the thumbs up to my app here. I'll move her in, size her up like yay. So she thinks my app is way cool. And they've got some animated backgrounds. For some reason, the old library assets that for some reason it was kind enough to import into Camtasia 9 didn't work in Camtasia 9. So I ended up getting rid of all of those. But hopefully they're going to come up with more. But they've got some cool animated backgrounds here. And they've got one called Flying Apps, which I'm going to put out here. So you can see here on my timeline that I've got my house, I've got my lady, and I've got my apps. Well, obviously, I want the apps in the background. So I'm going to go ahead and right-click on this here on the canvas, go to Arrange, Send to Back, and there we go. And if I play this, giving me a nice little thing. You still obviously can't move tracks up and down, but like I said, on the canvas now, it's very easy to go to Arrange, and you can move things forward and back, or just drag them down on the timeline, just like you always have. Okay. So we've got animated backgrounds. We've got one theme. It's a pretty cool theme, but I would like to see more. So gives you a call out. Already put some animations in there for you. Okay. Now, one thing I want to talk about is behaviors. I don't like this call out, so I'm going to get rid of it. I could delete things right from the canvas or right from the timeline, doesn't matter. Let's see if I can find a call out more to my liking. What's this one look like? Okay, good. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of Camtasia Studio 8. Okay, and we'll call this Cool Real Estate App. See how neat it is that you can edit things onto canvas now? Okay. Now, I want to, oh, brother. Okay. Now, one thing that I want to show you is something that is brand new to both Camtasias, and that is the concept of behaviors. Now, behaviors are another form of animation. And they do different things based on whether you're talking about the beginning of the clip, the middle of the clip, the end of the clip, what have you. Now, this came with some transitions. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of these transitions off of this call out. Maybe I'm going to blow the call out up a little bit too. And I think I want to add some behaviors to it. Now, as I mouse over the different behaviors that I have, you can sort of get a sense of what they do. But it's actually a lot more complex than that. I'm going to go ahead and drag this down onto my, oop, I wanted it on the group, not on the, just a moment. Oh, come on, you. There we go. Oh, no, there we don't go. It's not letting me do it on a group. Okay, so I'm just going to add it to the circle here. So watch what happens as I play this back. It bounces in, it bounces around, it bounces out. I can't say that I'm a huge fan of this interface convention that they're using of having it automatically applied to a transition in, the during part, and the transition out, and then having you remove what it is that you don't want. That's a little bit irksome, because you notice that it was bouncing this whole time, which is cool if that's what you want, but if it's not what you want, then it can be a pain. If I'm playing this back, you know, it's sort of pulsating the entire time. So I'm going to go ahead and get the pulsating out. Notice that I have this behavior properties here next to my visual properties. So basically, when I click on something, anything, any set of properties, whether it's text, whether it's callouts, etc., the properties are going to be lined up right here. So the during part, I want none. Just have it be an in and an out. So bounces in, settles, and then when I come over here, it bounces back out. Now, the cool thing about behaviors is that they can do a lot of things that you can't accomplish with traditional animations. You've got the standard animation presets. Custom is just adding an animation point and doing it all yourself, which is what I typically like to do. But there are also some some presets if you want to tilt it right, if you want to scale it up, if you want to tweak the opacity. You can do that. Now, one of the ways that behaviors is different from standard animations, in addition to giving you a bit more control and just generally feeling cooler, is how it deals with text. Notice in this group, I've got my cool real estate app text, and I am going to put, let me see what I want. Let's do the shifting one. I'm going to put a shifting behavior on the text. And I'm going to play it. Oh, that time it went as a group. Forgive me, there are some, I'm still learning the ins and outs of the behaviors. There are some behaviors that will allow you to animate text on a case-by-case basis. I'm going to ungroup this. Maybe that's part of the issue. For some reason, it's not giving me what I want. I'm going to add a new text call out just to start fresh. My behavior text. Okay. There we go. With text, and I'm not sure what the difference between this and this one is, but in this particular text call out, I'm allowed to specify whether I want it as a total object or if I want it as individual characters. So right now, if I play this back, notice how that's kind of falling into place. And of course, I have it set to bounce and jump before, during, and after. I take out the parts that I don't want. If I wanted it to jump from right to left instead of left to right, that's a trivial thing to do. Or if I wanted it to start in the center and go outward, like that. Let's say maybe I don't want it coming from the top, I want it coming from the bottom instead. And maybe there's a little too much bounce. You can also change the offset. I thought I had it coming in from the bottom. Okay, there we go. And now it changed to the top again. What's going on? Bottom. Okay, that might be a bug. And Suzanne asks, can you add visual properties over the top, like getting the text to fade in before it starts bouncing? Yeah, you can. So I could, a couple different ways to do this. I mean, you have transitions, animations, and behaviors now, which are basically 3 different ways of creating motion in a particular clip. And those can be stacked. So if I want just like a garden variety fade, I can do that. Let's make that fade a little bit longer. And there you go. Make sense? So behaviors are like animations on steroids. Now, there are a couple of things that, probably don't, that merit a mention, but they're not like a super big deal. Voice narration and quizzing sort of fall into that category. So if I go up here to voice narration, one thing that I thought was kind of cool that they've added now in Camtasia 9 is a window for your narration script. Typically, my workflow goes such that I almost always record my audio narration before I touch a frame of video, before I do any capture at all. But sometimes I record narration after the fact, and this will make it very, very simple rather than having to print out a paper script or keep a copy of Word open in a different monitor. You now have everything available to you right within the application. So that's cool. Now with interactivity and adding a quiz, they added back some behavior that they had took out initially in the name of simplicity, and they were sort of revamping quizzing at the time. So now you have the ability to, okay, say, what color is this guy? Creativity engine is run dry, I think. Blue, fuchsia. I don't even know if that's how you spell fuchsia. Oh, looks like I have spell check there telling me that it isn't. Magenta, etc. Nowadays, it used to be in versions of a long time ago, you could give some per question feedback and have sort of a path. So if it's correct, you can actually give a piece of feedback that's specific to this question and not just good job, good job, good job every time they get a question right. Same if it's incorrect. You can razz them and ridicule them in ways that are specific to the question being asked. And also, you've got actions. If they get it correct, do you keep going? If they get it incorrect, maybe you go, you jump back to the marker of the previous section, make them repeat it. If you want to be mean, if you want to make absolutely sure they've mastered the material. So it's something that used to be there, and then it wasn't there, and now it's there again. So now we talked about some of the things that maybe you need to be aware of. Lots of changes to hotkeys. I detail those in the book. They also detail them in the help file. There are certain elements of production that have gotten pink slipped. During production, there's only one smart player skin now. Also, you've lost the ability to produce to MOV, to MP3, and to M4V, sort of getting, kind of those antiquated iPod formats out of the way now that everything is pretty much MP4. And by the way, you still have the ability to create audio-only productions. It's just now it uses M4A, which is a vastly superior format to MP3, particularly for narration. You can get the file size down good and low, and the quality remains very much intact. Menu Maker has also gone the way of the dinosaur because, well, let's face it, who really puts their productions on optical disc media anymore? Just about nobody. There are obviously ways using programs like DVD Architect, you export to an AVI, and honestly, that's probably a better way to go about it anyway, so that it'll work on standard console DVD players. Camtasia Player's also gone. Ooh, something I didn't mention is that Ripple Delete has become its own thing, and it's divorced from cutting. Before, if you wanted to make a deletion and leave the space, you would press the delete key, and indeed is still how that works. If you wanted to close up the gap, then you would execute a cut, which would put the clip in your clip bin, and it would, kind of sew up the seam. Well, oh, it actually still did it here. Boy, do I feel sheepish. But you now have the ability to hold down Control and press Delete and not clutter up your clipboard. With all of the, with megabytes and megabytes potentially of stuff that you probably don't want. Does that make sense? Yes, thank you for the reminder, Lon. You can't import quizzes from the Windows version to the Mac version. So that's another thing that's kind of a bummer. But I'm sure they'll get some parity at some point relatively soon. Another thing that Windows people have that Mac people don't is the ability to do frame extensions, which is something that I do absolutely all the time. And it drives me crazy when I'm on the Mac side and I can't do it. Suzanne says, I find editing audio to be more difficult now that the UI is so dark. Can the UI color be changed? Maybe Lon knows a way. I don't think there's any way to change the color. Let me go into preferences and make sure I'm not lying to you, but I don't recall seeing anything like that. Nope. Nope, nope. One thing you definitely want to do, though, is make sure that mirror waveform is checked if you want to have audio that's easy to work with. I'm going to go ahead and go back into a project here. Yes, losing MOV with alpha is a real bummer. Although, to be honest, I don't use it all that much. So I'm going to go ahead and unlock this. There are two things you want to keep in mind if you want good visibility. Of your audio waveform. One is to adjust the height of your track. This adjusts the height of all tracks uniformly. Though to be honest, the audio is the only one that I like to have quite a lot of space on. And you also notice that I have a full waveform here. And that's because I have this mirror waveform option checked. Make sense? Okay. Let's talk a little bit about the book. I'm getting a lot of questions about when's it going to be out, what are the details. And the guide is getting a lot of attention. It's getting all new end of chapter exercises. I was planning on doing it anyway, but I kind of had to do it because my exercises were based on Camtasia Menu Maker, which no longer exists. But it's getting all new exercises. And finally, Adobe has gotten hip to the fact that they needed to expand their online publishing options, and there's now the ability to do an online edition of the book, which I am doing, and it keeps all of the built-in screencasts and the clickable screenshots that you can blow up to full size. I'm throwing in the PDF download also. But the coolest thing about online is that it's tablet friendly. I can't tell you how many messages I get saying, oh, I'm really interested in your book, but I want to be able to read it on my iPad. I want to be able to read it on my Android tablet. And I will say, well, if you want the full experience, you can't. Well, now you can, which is pretty cool. Camtasia 9, its UI has changed so much that the old book probably isn't going to serve. But I wanted to give people an upgrade path. So the cost of the book is $49 as per always. But if you are an owner of the Camtasia Studio 8 guide, then you only pay an upgrade fee. That's $29, so $20 off. And even better, regardless of whether you're an owner of the version 8 guide or not, you have the ability to buy for the next 5 days the book on pre-order. And you might think, well, oh, that's really great, but when is it finally going to drop? Well, I don't have an exact date, but I can tell you that I'm really, really close. The text and the screenshots are implemented, and I'm working my way now through the exercises and the quick casts. I've set a tentative release date of November 9th, so only a couple weeks away. But I believe in rewarding my early adopters. So if you want to pick up the book at the pre-order price, you may notice, at least I hope you notice, I'm kind of new to this live streaming on YouTube, but I'd set up a card. Tell me, do you have a little eye symbol enclosed in a circle in the upper right-hand corner of your screens by chance? Because if you do, that's where the pre-order link is. And if it isn't, well, then I'm going to be sending out an email with the link in it. Lon says yes, Suzanne says no. Oh boy. Should be in the upper right-hand corner of the video window. A little circle with a lowercase I inside. Jim, you are absolutely correct. Those who have taken the boot camp from me, this is the actual live in-person course where you have to have seen my face. But yes, if you took one of the boot camps, then you get this update and every update from now until the end of time for free. And when the book drops, it will basically appear in your dashboard automatically. So Jim, you don't have to buy the book at all. But as for the rest of you, you can, if you don't own the version 8 guide, you can buy it for $50 when it drops. If you do have the version 8 guide, you can buy it for $30 when it drops, or you can buy for $26 right now, regardless of whether you own the other version. So Suzanne says, come and do a boot camp in the UK. I've considered it, but now I'm going to tell you a little bit about what my plan for the future is. I very recently took a course that absolutely rocked my world, that was on the topic of motion design. And it wasn't the content that rocked my world. Well, the content did rock my world, but also the format that rocked my world. Because I was getting a little bit exasperated with the online course, because people would buy it, and that was great. I like it when people buy things from me. But they also, I would check up on them later, because I have metrics and I have the ability to spy on you a little bit and see what parts of the content you have touched. And people petered off more often than not very, very quickly. Now, a lot of marketers might just say, well, hey, I got paid, so good for me. But I'm not most marketers. I got a little bit disconcerted by that. And so I'm in the process of crafting a brand new course that is unlike anything I've ever done, and I think unlike anything that's ever been seen. I'm going to be doing an online course, but isn't exclusively on demand. There are going to be parts that are on demand. There are parts that are going to be live. And throughout all of it, you have to actually be turning in work and creating your own screencast project as we're going through it, based on the lessons that we cover during the particular time. And by the end of the course, you will have a good, solid, professional screencast of your very own, and getting feedback from me all the while. So I don't want to talk about it too much yet, because it's still in the very, very early stages, but it's very likely that we're going to be suspending the live boot camps for a while and focusing on this new online course that is partially on demand, partially live over the internet, and guided the entire time by me, and also practical, where you're working on your own stuff and not just some set of exercises where you don't have anything usable at the end. So anyway, that's that. For those who have asked if there's going to be a replay, yes, the replay will actually be right on this very YouTube page. Once we conclude the broadcast, you'll be able to watch it over again. If you have questions, please go ahead and ask them now. Whether it's about Camtasia 9, Camtasia Mac, the book, the course, what have you. I'm just sort of cycling back through the chat. Mark asks what my thoughts are on noise cancellation. It doesn't seem as good as in version 8. Noise cancellation is kind of a it's not something that I like to deal with. I find that it's much more helpful to start off with as noise-free a content stream as you can possibly make it. A lot of the higher end tools are a little bit better at noise cancellation than others. For lesser audio tools, and yes, Camtasia Studio and Camtasia 9 fall into that category, unfortunately. It has a tendency to establish a threshold. Okay, here's the difference between signal and noise, and so I'm going to strip out that level of noise. And on segments that are supposed to be silent, it works wonders. On segments that have tech speaking in it, it can't distinguish very well between the signal and the noise. So you get silence and then narration accompanied by noise, silence, narration accompanied by noise, etc. So my first advice to you, Mark, would be to take steps to soundproof as much as you can. You know, kill the fan, kill the fluorescent lights, work in off hours when you don't have a lot of traffic going around. As clean and as an original cut as you can work with, the better. If you have a threshold of noise that you find you need to get rid of, then my recommendation would be to invest in a tool like Audition or SoundForge, which I just found out is no longer a Sony property. It's its own thing now. Audition, unfortunately, Audition is my choice, but unfortunately, it's now subscription only. You can't buy the product as a standalone anymore. And renting it as a standalone is, in my opinion, prohibitively expensive. If you like to use a whole bunch of Adobe products, then Creative Cloud is absolutely great. But anyway, that's all I have to say about that. Let's see, what else? Do Camtasia 9 quizzes and hotspots work in an LMS like Canvas? Yes, they do work in an LMS. Camtasia 9 does still have SCORM. It can tell not only when a person opened the video, but you can set a threshold for the amount of video watched before it gets marked as complete, which is nice. And yes, you can import quiz grades as well. Lewis says he uses Audacity to record audio, and it does a very good job of noise canceling, and it's free. I've recently revisited Audacity. I had my issues with it in that it's not a tool that works very well with my workflow. I'm the kind of guy who likes to record a sentence multiple times and be able to punch in a brand new sentence right over a mistake without having to deal with a gazillion other tracks. And I can't get Audacity to do that. But yes, it is absolutely free. And its waveform editing tools are quite good. And something else that we can mention is that it's cross-platform. You can get it for Windows, you can get it for Mac. Emily asked, what's the best way to get multiple hotspots stacked on top of each other at the same place in the timeline? By the same place in the timeline, I'm assuming you're referring to having different clickable elements on the canvas at once, and not necessarily superimposed right on top of each other, because, well, there wouldn't be any point to that. But here, let me show you real quick. I'm going to go in here, and I'm just going to use a legacy call out. So I got this guy right here and this guy right here. You can see that they're stacked on top of each other here in the timeline. So here's option 1. Here's option 2, right? Okay. And then we'll add hotspots to these, which I want to say is, I want to say it's under visual effects. Yeah. So I would drag one here, and I can set my interactive hotspot options accordingly. So let's say I want this one to go to TechSmith, right? And then I click over here on option 2, put an interactive hotspot on that, and say I want that one to go to Dapper Text. Right? So I have 2 in time at the same time. And Emily writes, in the past, when I tried that, only the one at the top of the stack would work after rendering. It should not be that way. Well, geez, now you got me curious. I want to produce this. Do-do-do. Do-do-do. All right. Don says, I cannot get the buy screen. I do not own your first book. Is that why? I thought you said anyone could get the pre-order price. Yes, anyone can get the pre-order price. It's really not a buy. Basically, we're in the very early stages. There's not even a sales page yet, but clicking that link should take you directly to the shopping cart where you can immediately input your details and check out. For those of you who had done it, first of all, thank you for your business. And second, is that your experience? Can anybody chime in who's just bought? Do. Okay. Well, that's cooking away. And I am going to see. There were a couple of people said, yes, it absolutely worked that way. Okay. Oh, and Don says he got it. Great. Fantastic. Thank you so much, guys. So anyway, that's all the news that's fit to print. Did I miss anybody's question? Okay, well, if there's nothing else, I want to thank you so much. I think we ran a little bit over. I apologize. Yes, I will include a link in the comments. Thank you for that. And also, there's going to be a link going out to the screencaster list. And before we sign off, I want to take a peek here and see where the heck are... Oh, where was that button? I'm going to double check. It was right around 25 seconds. Okay, so I'm going to click option 1, goes to TechSmith. Come back here, click option 2, goes to Dapper Text. So, yep, works as expected. Lance says, make certain you do not have the video maximized. I'm perplexed, y'all. I didn't figure that would make a difference, but I'm gonna do as Lance says. Well, actually, I'm gonna challenge what Lance says and see about. I have the window maximized. I click, goes to TechSmith. Come back here. Window maximized, click, goes to Dapper Text. Absolutely works as expected. which is good because so many things don't. So anyway, I think we're going to conclude this here. I thank you so much for coming and learning with me, because I learn things every time I do one of these. And you'll be getting a message from me soon with book purchasing details. And thank you to the ones who have already bought. I really appreciate it. And I will also put the link in the comments. So thank you so much.